16 April 1945. The East China Sea, 50 kilometers off the coast of Okinawa. The sun has barely cleared the horizon when the radar screens aboard USS Laffey begin to fill with contacts. Not one, not five, dozens. They are coming in low, fast, and from every direction at once. Japanese pilots locked inside aircraft loaded with bombs and extra fuel, each one a guided missile with a human heart. The men of Laffey have been at battle stations since before dawn. They are already tired. They are already afraid. What is about to happen to this single destroyer over the next 80 minutes will become one of the most extraordinary acts of collective survival in the entire history of naval warfare. 22 aircraft will attack this one ship. 6 will strike her directly. 4 bombs will also land on her decks. 32 of her crew will be killed and another 71 wounded. And yet, through something that defies easy explanation, a combination of engineering, desperation, and the crew that simply refused to fight, the Laffey will not sink. To understand what the men of Laffey faced that morning, you need to understand the broader situation unfolding around Okinawa in the spring of 1945. By this point in the Pacific War, Japan had lost the ability to fight the United States conventionally. The great carrier battles of 1942 and 1944 had broken the back of the Imperial Japanese Naval Air Service. Experienced aviators who had trained for years were dead, their replacements given, at best, 40 to 50 hours in the cockpit before being pointed at an enemy warship. Japan could not win a dogfight. It could not win a bombing campaign. What it could do, in the terrible calculus of military desperation, was remove the pilot from the equation entirely and turn the aircraft itself into the weapon. The Special Attack Corps, the Tokotai, had been formally organized in October 1944 under Vice Admiral Takijiro Onishi. Their first coordinated strike had sunk the escort carrier USS San Lo in the Philippines. The results had been electrifying for Japanese commanders. A conventional bombing run against a well-defended warship succeeded at best 14% of the time by 1945. A kamikaze attack, because it required no aiming beyond basic course correction, struck its target far more reliably. By the time the Okinawa campaign began in April 1945, Japan had assembled what it called Operation Gikusui, floating chrysanthemums, a series of 10 mass kamikaze waves totaling nearly 1,500 aircraft. The Allied fleet anchoring those landings had nowhere to hide. Destroyers like Laffey were positioned on the outer picket lines, specifically to provide early warning and to draw the attacks away from the larger, more valuable carriers and troopships. They were, by design, the bait. USS Laffey was a Sumner-class destroyer, 114 meters in length, displacing 3,400 tons when fully loaded, roughly the weight of 450 double-decker buses. She had been commissioned in February 1944 and carried 5 127mm guns, 12 40mm anti-aircraft cannons, and 11 20mm guns. On paper, she was a formidable anti-aircraft platform. In practice, on the morning of 16 April 1945, she was one ship against a sustained, coordinated assault that no destroyer in the United States Navy had ever been asked to survive. The attack began at 8:27. The first kamikaze came from the stern. Laffey's gunners engaged it at roughly 1,800 meters, close enough that the crew could see the pilot through the cockpit glass, accounts suggest, and they hit it, but not before it struck the aft gun mount, killing several men outright and setting the deck alight. Before damage control parties could respond, a second aircraft came in from the port side, then a third from starboard. Laffey's commander, Lieutenant Commander Julian Beckton, ordered every gun that could still fire to keep firing. Some of the 20mm mounts were now being operated by men standing in the middle of fires, in some cases with shipmates burning beside them. What made Laffey's survival technically remarkable is that a Sumner-class destroyer was simply not designed to absorb this kind of punishment. The class was built for speed and firepower, not armor. Her hull was 19 millimeters of steel at its thickest point, less than the width of two stacked pound coins, and the Japanese aircraft hitting her were each carrying between 250 and 500 kilograms of high explosive, plus fuel. The fourth kamikaze hit amidships, directly above the engine room. The fifth struck the aft section and destroyed one of her rudders. The sixth hit with such force that it embedded itself partially into the structure before its payload detonated. By the time the assault paused at approximately 9:47, Laffey had no functioning stern guns, one rudder, significant flooding in multiple compartments, and fires burning across her entire aft section. Her speed had dropped to under 6 knots. She was, by any conventional assessment, finished. If you're finding this account gripping, a quick subscribe helps this series more than you might realize, and there is a great deal more history like this still to come. It is worth comparing Laffey's ordeal against what other destroyers on the Okinawa picket lines experienced during the same period. Of the 206 American ships damaged by kamikaze attack during the entire Okinawa campaign, 36 were sunk. The Laffey is unusual not because she was attacked more heavily than others. Several destroyers were struck by multiple aircraft, but because she absorbed a sustained, concentrated assault from 22 separate aircraft and remained afloat. By contrast, USS Morrison, stationed on a nearby picket line just 2 weeks later on 4 May 1945, was struck by 4 kamikazes and sank in minutes with the loss of 152 men. The difference was not superior American engineering. Estimates suggest it came down to the flooding patterns, the angle of individual strikes, and, in no small part, the speed and effectiveness of Laffey's damage control teams, who were fighting fires and shoring up bulkheads even while aircraft were still inbound. The legacy of USS Laffey sits within a specific and troubling context. The kamikaze campaign at Okinawa killed approximately 5,000 American sailors, the highest naval casualty figure of any single operation in the Pacific War. It damaged or destroyed 368 ships, and it genuinely alarmed Allied planners preparing for the invasion of the Japanese home islands, codenamed Operation Downfall, scheduled for late 1945. Intelligence estimates at the time suggested Japan had reserved between 5,000 and 10,000 aircraft for kamikaze use against an invasion fleet. The scale of what Laffey survived in 80 minutes was, in the minds of American admirals, a preview of what an entire invasion might look like, multiplied by an order of magnitude. Some historians argue the kamikaze threat, more than any other single factor, reinforced the strategic case for the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945. The Laffey and ships like her were the living evidence of what conventional invasion might cost. Today, USS Laffey is preserved at Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, where she has sat since 1981. She is the only surviving Sumner-class destroyer in the world. Visitors can walk her decks, stand at the gun mounts her crew operated with fires burning around them, and see the hull that was hit 6 times and never went down. The repair records from her eventual return to Puget Sound Naval Shipyard list damage to 32 separate compartments. Engineers who surveyed her in the days after the attack reportedly described her condition as inconsistent with a vessel still capable of independent navigation. She should not have been floating. She was. 16 April 1945. 80 minutes, 22 aircraft, and a ship full of men who decided, without orders, without certainty, and without any reasonable expectation of surviving, that they were not finished yet. 32 of them died that morning. 71 more were wounded. The rest stayed at their stations, feeding ammunition, fighting fires, steering with one rudder, until the last aircraft turned away. The Laffey did not sink because of her armor. She had almost none.
She did not survive because the attacks failed. Most of them did not. She survived because at every gun mount that still had a man standing behind it, that man kept firing. That is the only explanation the record supports. And sometimes, in the history of war, that is enough.